Okay, great. So the first part of this sort of training session that I wanted to orient folks was kind of go recapping of what is EPINET. So thinking about this early psychosis intervention network is having regional networks of early psychosis programs, and our hub being the Texas hub. So we have sites all across the state of Texas, and you'll know EPINET has sort of regional networks elsewhere in the country. We are obviously going to be the Texas hub, and the goal is ultimately to have shared measures across all programs within this network and utilizing a data platform to collect de-identified person level data. So that data platform we'll be using is REDCap, and you'll learn the ins and outs of it as much as you need to know for this project by the end of today, hopefully. And when we're collecting this information, this data, we're hoping to use it for multiple purposes, like having good, accurate information to improve our decision making for the folks utilizing our programs, to continue improving services, and to remain innovative and try out new approaches towards information that we learn, and then understand the impact that those changes have by kind of keeping this as an ongoing learning process. And so this graph can be a little overwhelming, but these are sort of the qualities of this learning healthcare system model that we're striving for. So over to the far left, you'll kind of see this emphasis on data management and data. So we're hoping that when we're going through these steps, we're collecting this data, this information, we're putting it into knowledge that we have of the field, knowledge to be able to improve our practice, and put that knowledge into actually changing our practice, changing our approach, improving our approach, and sort of keeping this cycle of learning by collecting as much information as we can and seeing the impact that it has. So that's really the goal of when we're thinking about collecting this information. It's for the sake of overall improving our ability to implement the best practice that we can for folks using our programs. And so how this relates to you all is each of the EPINET sites in Texas will be collecting a set of these standardized measures and putting them into this database that we have. And you all have been, each of you, identified as someone on your team who will help support us in this effort of sort of collecting these standard measures and working to improve our overall practice. And so I wanted to put a general sort of broad overview of what it looks like when someone is an active participant, one of the clients enrolled in this program. And so when you get a referral to the CSC program, in an ideal world, what we're hoping for is when a referral is made to your program, they are made what we're calling a GUID, which is going to be their universal unique identifier for this particular study. And this will be relevant to the folks that I specifically train at your site. So whoever you designate, one, maybe two people at most, who will kind of, I'll teach them how to use this tool that kind of just shoots out a unique identifier for every participant in the study. So our goal is that when you get a referral, you make them this GUID, whether they end up enrolling or coming into the program or not, just to make sure that they have that step sort of taken care of. Then they, of course, enter into the program. And you'll notice these three sort of brain bubbles, these last three bubbles at the end. Those signify sort of time points. Those signify time points that we're hoping that we collect this assessment, these three assessments that I'll go into further detail on the next slides. Every 6 months, we hope to collect this data. And you'll notice that in the parentheses, it says within a 30-day window. So what is going to happen is we will have sort of set days and times or set date windows where this assessments will be collected. And that'll be on me sort of letting you all know. I'll do a lot of pinging, a lot of communication with you all to make sure that this makes sense. So just to kind of give you an understanding of when someone's enrolled, it will be sort of an ongoing process of giving them these assessments. And so these assessments that we're administering, we have this core assessment battery. And some folks have already kind of had conversations about what this core assessment battery is. But in a nutshell, it is these 3 different types of assessments that we're going to be doing with each of the folks we enroll. And the first one is a self-administered assessment, which we've asked all of you to think about getting a tablet or an iPad where the client themselves will actually click through the survey and do this on their own. This is the only part that they're actually sort of hands-on doing the assessment. Then there's the chart review, which is pretty self-explanatory. The staff will complete that by being able to look into their chart. And then the clinical assessments that your clinicians will also complete and be able to just enter into this database. And I'll explain more about sort of the process as we go through as well, but just to give you an overview of what we mean when we say do a time point, completing these assessments. And so to get a little further into what each of these 3 assessments are, so the self-administered assessment, what clients will expect to see are things related, asking about their demographics, education, employment, legal involvement, medication, adherence and side effects, their substance use, functioning, and recovery. So those are things that the client will be answering. With the chart review, it'll be things that you will find in their chart. So sort of their duration of untreated psychosis, diagnosis, medications, overall physical health, substance use treatment, hospitalizations, and family involvement. And then this third component are the clinical assessments. So some folks have already attended the first clinical assessment that we're doing, which is the Compass 10 training. And if you didn't get to go through that training, I'm actually going to upload eventually and send out to you all sort of a recording that the folks who did that training have. And we also have another clinical assessment that we have not given information about. The training, it is outsourced to different folks who give that training. So when we know, we will get you all trained up on that global assessment of functioning, clinical assessment, but that's not something we expect of you as of now since we haven't rolled out that training. And then later on in the game, there will be something that comes up called the Penn Cognitive Scale. That is something we're working with the Penn folks to get implemented, but is not something we're going to worry about at all right now. But just to keep everyone in the loop that it's going to be part of the clinical assessments that we eventually do with folks. And so with all of that data that we're collecting, we're going to be housing it in this database called REDCap. And so hopefully everyone should have received an email saying that you were granted access into this project on REDCap. If you were not, do not worry. Check your spam, or I will work with you after this training to ensure that we can get you all logged in and make sure that it's the best use of your time possible. What's nice is there's not an app or a real download to get into REDCap. It's just a website you can access from the website listed there. And this will be our central data collection tool that we'll be going through today, and just making sure that you understand sort of the ins and outs of where this data will live and where you will enter it. And hopefully it becomes more straightforward as we kind of play around and I get you all oriented into it. So the overall goal for today that I have for you is to learn how to navigate REDCap. And so I attached to this Outlook invite a REDCap instruction guide that I'm hoping you all will be able to follow along with today. So I will kind of do a run through of that guide, and then I'll do a live sort of example of me doing everything in REDCap for you. And then I'll give you some time at the end to play around. I'll sit here and just wait for any questions, any time that you get stuck, and see how it goes. Before I kind of jump into the other components, the actual components of REDCap. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer? I know I kind of ran through a lot of information. Is there any questions that came up for folks before I go in? Okay. Feel free to interrupt me at any time as well. I'm more than happy to pause throughout. This training is entirely for you, and I'm just here to help you navigate. So if folks have that instruction guide and you want to kind of follow along as I'm clicking through, that would be great. And then see kind of what discrepancies come up for you as we go. So the first component will be logging into REDCap, which seems simple, but usernames and passwords get a little chaotic sometimes. But what'll happen when you do log in is you will have automatically this list of projects that you're a part of, and you will actually have, when we're doing real data collection, it'll say EPINET-TX. For now, we're keeping you all in sort of this mirror project, this kind of false practice room, just to make sure that you're able to try and break anything as much as you can without sacrificing any real data. And then once you're ready to move into that real environment, we'll move you into that project. So right now, yours will say EPINET-TX Mirror Project. And you will click on that link. And to where you'll be spending a lot of your time when you're doing this with different clients or looking at different data, you'll be spending a lot of time in this add/edit records, just because that's where you'll find all of the records that you've made for folks when you're going back in to enter data or correct anything or anything like that. So for right now, we're going to be creating a new record. And so click add/edit records. And when you click on that, it'll bring up this option that'll either have a drop-down menu, which you'll use when you've already created that record for a client and you're going to find them again. But for right now, you would click add new record. So this green button. And then it will bring up this sort of bigger page of a lot of empty circles, which can be a little overwhelming. And I'll show you on the real screen when I go through this, that what all of those different bubbles mean is sort of that assessments have not been completed for anyone. And so to begin a whole new record with a whole new person, we will be going to this baseline admin info bubble. So the top left bubble. And when you click on that bubble, you will be brought to this new admin info page, which is creating a new record for the person that you're entering right now. And so a couple of things to note on this page are these top two sections. So this record ID, this REDCap generated ID, that is something that this database creates automatically for every person. So on this example, it says 10. For some of you, depending on your site, it'll say 192-1. That number will be just created there, and it'll be something that the person who's making this second column down here, the second row, the GUID tool, they'll be logging the GUID and the REDCap ID. So folks who are just pulling up a record already and doing it with a client will not need to worry about these two things. It'll already be made for you. But some things that I do want to note on this page are going to be that when the person is making a new record for a person, to make sure that you complete all sections, including the language. That'll be really important because we do have Spanish and English tools, and it just keeps it making sure that you're pulling up the right survey data for everybody when you make this new record. One thing that is a little finicky about this is do not change this form. It can be very intuitive to change the drop-down menu to say complete. Do not do that because that is something that REDCap will do automatically when all of the assessments are done. So no need to change that to complete. And then when you are saving this first page, you will save and exit. If you are just creating it and then deciding, oh, I'm going to come back later and do the self-administered piece or anything else with the client, I just made it ahead of time, totally fine. Or if this is a person who walked in who you don't know when they'll be coming back next, you can click save and go to next form and immediately begin doing an assessment with them. So either one of these will save this record, and that person now exists in REDCap and has a record that you can refer back to when you need to. So when you go to save and go to next form like we just did, or if you go back and pull up their record, what is listed here are those 3 assessments that I sort of explained earlier. So the demographics and background, that's that self-administered portion that the client will complete as a survey. There's the second, the chart review, and then there's the place to enter the clinician surveys. So those reports that I mentioned earlier as well. So when you come back to this start point guide, that'll be something that I'll show you on the website itself. There's always a bubble either to the left or in the middle of the page that says start point guide that you can go back to. It'll always bring you back to this page. And notice that to the right of these links, it says incomplete. So in theory, when you have completed those assessments, it'll come up as a green complete. So you know if you're ever checking to go back, oh, I'm not sure for this participant, which if I did complete that or not, you can go back to the start point guide and this will come up and it'll show whether you've completed those or not. So for the first example of a survey that we'll be doing, I would click this demographics and background link, and clicking on that link will bring you to a page really similar to that last admin info page. And something that we want, particularly for the component that only the client is doing, is it will be very intuitive to enter the data directly on the page that comes up. What we ask is that you, on the top right, there will be this box that says survey options as noted here. And we ask that you log out and open the survey when you're going to hand the tablet over to the client for a number of reasons. One, the logging out and open survey ensures that as soon as the survey is complete, there will be no risk of the client now seeing all of the other pages that were open or clicking around anywhere. It will just log you out and save that data as is. You can also click just open survey if you prefer, and then it'll say end survey and the client can hand it back to you. When you do that option, there is a pop-up that comes up that I'll address on the next slide, but just making sure that folks open the survey in this way, because it just makes sure that all of the points are saved appropriately, and it comes up a lot more user-friendly. And I'll show you an example of what it looks like when I open the survey. It's a lot easier to navigate on an iPad, which is ideal for these folks filling it out themselves. And so just to note that when you do not click log out and open survey and you just open the survey, what it does is it opens a window and leaves your other window open, and this prompt will come up. This is totally fine to do it this way. Just ensure that you click leave without saving changes whenever you see this prompt, just because it does go back and override all of the data you just entered. For whatever reason, we cannot get it to stop doing this. So that's why we're encouraging you to do the log out and open survey, because this piece doesn't come up when you do that. When it does, do not worry. If things do get deleted, there is a way for me to go in and dig out the responses that were created. But in an ideal world, I don't have to do that, and all of the data will just be saved. But just a little forewarning of these little finicky things that sort of happen within this database that we've found. And so now what I was going to do is show you sort of a live example of all of those things that I just showed you, just to show you what it's going to look like on your end and see how that looks. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions so far of what I've done? And I'm sure you do, but it'll make maybe more sense when I actually click through and see how that goes. But if there's anything I can clear up before. Okay, folks seem okay. So we'll go ahead and dive into it. So what you're seeing now is the login page. And so I will go ahead and log in. And as I said before, you will obviously not be enrolled in all of these projects. I am, but you will have this EPINET-TX mirror test project. So that will likely be your only option on here. And you will click into that. And there is this kind of overwhelming mess of things that is going on here. But what I want you to focus on is this add/edit records. That'll be kind of your home base for finding everything that you need, whether you're adding someone or finding someone. You will go to this add/edit records on the left-hand side. And so when I click on that, we're back at this page where either you will find a previous record. So these are all a bunch of tests that I've already made to do some practice records. Or for this case, we're going to make a brand new record. And so similarly, what I had zoomed in before is you'll notice all of these empty bubbles here. And that essentially tells us that none of these assessments have been attempted or completed at each of these sort of time points that we're going to be collecting eventually for these folks. So because this is a brand new record at their baseline, we're going to go to this admin info, this top left bubble, and click on this bubble. And when you do that, it brings up this page. So a couple of notes just to reorient you from what I just showed you on those screenshots is this record ID is up here. So that is something that was just generated automatically. And again, for folks who will be making this second row, these GUIDs for people, there will be a place that you log this with me. So you'll log the person's internal client ID that you all have, you'll log their GUID that was created, and this record ID just for safe measure. So if any typos happen, something gets deleted, it's not an issue. We'll be able to track these people down in one way or another. And so we will say for my practice session, we will do, what is the date today? 0/17. And I will be clicking GUID. And for the sake of going through these practice sessions, do not stress about what you enter in here. You can put your name, but you will be putting in the client's actual GUID that we have for this study, just to clarify that. And for today, either one of these, we're doing it today. It'll be client self-report. It'll be in English. And then I will click save and go to next form. And that will make the record for this particular person. And so after I click that, it brings up these 3 assessments that I am ready to complete as we go. So I will go ahead and click that same link that we were talking about. So the client self-report. So when I click on this link here, it brings up a page. So this kind of what I mentioned earlier of how it's intuitive to just go ahead and start entering data on this page. What we're hoping is that at this point, you go up to this top right survey options drop-down menu, and we will click log out and open survey. And we will leave. Let's go back up here. And so what it does is it brings up automatically this kind of more user-friendly, especially we're hoping that you all get a chance to practice on a tablet or an iPad before you administer this to clients. But it's a very straightforward kind of way to click through as opposed to entering it directly on that page. And so I'll just click through some stuff so you all can see what it looks like when we get to the bottom. And so what is really nice too is we implemented this sort of survey progress bar that'll be really useful for clients, just to see how many pages they have left going. And so you can see kind of the standard different demographics and education questions. And I'll just be clicking through so we can get to the end. And so legal involvement and all of these sort of different responses. And of course, just to reiterate that we're hoping that all of these questions get answered. I just, for the sake of this tutorial, am not really accurately responding as if it's a real survey. And then we will get to the last page here. And then it will, end the survey, and that portion of that assessment is complete. So it'll come up as just a closed survey option, and I will log back in to this page. And so what I will do is I'll go back to this start point guide. So kind of what I mentioned earlier, you can always click on this bubble off to the left. This start point guide will always bring you back to those assessments that you had for that particular record that you're logged into. So now you can see that survey was complete because I clicked through the entire thing. And if for some reason you kind of lost on this page, you didn't get back to where you thought you needed to go, you can go back to this add/edit records page when you come back to this home page, and just go ahead and find your record again and see where you left off. So I'll look for my practice 0617 that I had made, and it'll bring me back to this page, and you can see that that assessment was complete. And I would just go back to this start point guide again. And it brings me back as I'm ready to do my chart review portion or my clinical survey with that person. So yeah, when in doubt, I think the best advice that I've found even navigating this site is if I get lost, go back to that add/edit records button, find my person again and see what happened. And then the start point guide will kind of tell you where you're at with that person. I just went through kind of a lot. Are there any questions that folks have before our kind of next step is hopefully getting you all able to log in, kind of try and make a record, see how that goes for you, and I'll kind of just be here as support.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I saw when you were going over the practice with just using the individual in service, that there was also an option for family members. Is that something that we'll be setting up for family members as well?
So no, it's not an assessment that we anticipate having family members. Our goal is that the client is completing it on their own. What that is, the purpose for is every page you can kind of select who's filling out the survey. So if for some reason the client is not answering certain questions, or they just don't know, or depending on the situation they're experiencing that day, there's opportunity where if you learned that info from a family member who's there, you can enter it, kind of information you got on their behalf. If you notice that they didn't fill out maybe a page of their self-administered assessment, but it's things that you know from their chart, or their gender or their gender at birth that they maybe didn't fill in, that you're able to fill in, you're able to kind of mark that you inputted that data for that particular page, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
I had one other question about GAF and why we're using the GAF, because it's not used anymore in the DSM. So
yeah, that is a great question. I do not really know the inner workings of the decisions that were made on a larger scale for this project, unfortunately. But that is something that I can actually talk to Molly and Debbie about to see if we have more justification for that as well. I do think as well that when this project was sort of culminated and designed, it might have been more highly utilized at that time point and just hasn't really been an updated version as to that, but that's definitely something that I can take note of and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was there any other questions before I kind of let you all venture into the world of REDCap, see if you can get logged in? If anyone has not received ever an email saying you were added into a project, let me know, or if you're having a hard time even getting to the first point. My plan for the rest of this session is really just to help you all navigate, see if you get stuck, and see what I can help with. So no questions. Okay. So if you're able and, time permitting based on your schedule, if you're able to log in, kind of do exactly what I said, create a new record, try and get through that first survey and see how that goes for you. And then when you're done with that, let me know. And, I'll just, if you have roadblocks on the way there, I'm happy to help you navigate those. And if not, then what we're going to leave with today is sort of, I have some final kind of notes before I send you off. So if you all could just take maybe a few minutes and try clicking through, seeing how that goes, I'll be here to support. I will go ahead and share. But essentially what I'm going to do is set up future meetings with you all, sort of touch points, check-in points, to make sure that everything is making sense before I ever unleash you into the real world of the data collection piece. So no worries on that end, that if today, when everyone was able to log in, or go in and they're, none of this training sunk in, that's completely fine. I'm happy to do it again. I'm happy to have one-on-ones with folks as much as needed. So with that, I will essentially bring up what the next steps will be, which is spend time practicing and getting into that account, playing around, going through all 3 of the assessments, seeing what comes up for you. Something that I know will come up with folks that comes up a lot is on that first assessment, if you don't open the survey in that sort of user-friendly way, some complications come up. So I anticipate many questions coming up. So please practice within your team, practice on your own, play around as much as you want. I'm going to make myself available to you all. What I'm planning to do is kind of to reach out to everyone in a week, see how things have gone. If you've had a chance to practice, what questions come up for you. If you, haven't even had a chance to touch it at that point, I'll schedule another time to ping you and see when works best for you. And sort of just to answer any questions that you have coming up for folks who will be the team leads. So those people that will be creating those GUIDs, you'll be receiving sort of a couple different emails from me. So what I'm going to do is add you into the NDA GUID tool. And so what that means is you'll first sign a user agreement, just saying you agree to have the responsibility to create these GUIDs. And then you'll get access to this tool. That's a really simple download. It's not like a JavaScript download, so it hasn't brought up many issues for folks' IT departments, but of course we all know that everyone's can be finicky. So we'll give you time to sort of navigate downloading that. And I will meet personally with each of the people who will be making these GUIDs to walk you through that website. It's a lot more, believe it or not, self-explanatory than REDCap is. It's a very simple system that we have. And I will just be walking you through exactly what that looks like, where you're going to log that information and make sure it's very clear. So, and just as a recap too of those GUIDs, which I put in that FAQs document that was attached to this meeting as well, for clients who we have the full legal name, the gender, the city of birth, and the date of birth, we will be able to make them sort of these GUIDs. So use that tool in the standard way. What you'll see on many different documents is that option for this pseudo GUID. And that is just what we're going to be using for folks who we have no way to obtain the city that they were born in. That's just going to be the reality for a lot of things. We won't have the full legal name. We know they have a middle name. We don't know what it is, and they don't either. We expect cases like that to happen. And so this pseudo GUID will be something that I explain to the person creating these GUIDs as well. It'll be treated exactly the same as any other person. just the way we log it will be a little bit different. And so I'll walk you all through that as well. And so just in summary of kind of what happens after this meeting is hopefully I get you all access to, and hopefully you're going to be getting an email allowing you to access. You'll spend time practicing. The team leads will get these different emails from me about the GUID tools, and all of you will be getting follow-ups, kind of just asking, how are things going? I'll try and set up even just like a random Outlook office hour on a Friday afternoon to see if folks want to attend and hop on with me and just hash out any following questions that we have. And just to again reiterate, this is not us, putting on this intense pressure of in 1 week, you need to be ready to start collecting data. We want just this to be as comfortable for you so that you feel confident going in. And of course, once you enroll your first participant, you're going to have more questions and more speed bumps are going to come up. And I fully anticipate that being the case. So